Hideki Kamiya, bad boy director behind stylish action games like Bayonetta and Viewtiful Joe, famously hates horror and scary things, which might lead you to believe that his directorial debut was merely him doing his job and trying to climb the corporate ladder. But I think that's selling the game a bit short, because while Resi 2 is a tank-controlled fixed-camera spook 'em up, it already features a lot of the Kamiya-isms that would go on to flourish in his later projects. I always got the impression that Shinji Mikami is never too concerned about storytelling in his games, but the same isn't true for Kamiya. Capcom were making a concerted effort to turn Resident Evil into the mega franchise we know today, which led them to hire famous scriptwriter Noboru Sugimura to work his magic. Despite that and Kamiya's complete lack of writing experience though, Resi 2's plot and characters were ultimately still a collaborative effort between the two, and that experience would go on to greatly inform Kamiya's future work. The end result is arguably the most personal feeling game in the entire series. Resi 2 exudes charm from top to bottom, much more so than its predecessor, and it arguably wouldn't be matched again in this regard until the 4th entry. Maybe I just like Leon, I don't know. From the city streets to the police station itself, this immediately feels like a much busier, more cluttered world. The environmental detail with its posters and trinkets strewn about suggests that these people actually had lives outside of their jobs, and that makes the tragedy so much more palpable. This is so silly to say about a corny-ass PS1 game, but when you see how your colleagues on the force made all these preparations for your welcoming party, only for all of it to be in vain, man, it kinda hits you. Resident Evil has always been a game about fleeting encounters with other survivors between long stretches of isolation, but 2's cast in particular has so much going on. Every person you meet on your adventure immediately has some kind of strong personal motivation, whether it be to get home, get the story, or get the dick. You know exactly what these people are about, so once you get to those sweet payoffs, it actually has some gravitas. Classic Resi games tend to go for a level design with more forward momentum in their final act, and I'd say this shift in structure matches the urgency of the story really well here. It's this mad push to the finish line as everything starts to fall apart around you, and I love how your appearance changes to reflect this progression of events. It really sells just how much you've been through. It's great to see Leon and Claire grow into their roles as heroes and how they're always trying to proactively help everyone around them. And the voice acting perfectly toes the line between cheesy and adorable. Claire especially just doesn't take shit from anyone.
Leon, you have to go back and get Sherry for me. I left her in the security office. Please, you must save her.
Wait a second. What are you gonna do? Where are you going?
To the bottom platform.
I still have a few loose ends to take care of. I'm counting on you.
Compare this to Resi 1, where every man you run into is just this huge asshole and runs off without doing or explaining anything, and then when they die, it's just like, alright.
My God!
And, actually, I'm not gonna make a joke about Jill's sandwiches, this is not that kind of video. Resi 2's story isn't the only aspect where this personal touch can be felt though, it's everywhere. One of the most defining features of Kamiya's games is their replayability, not just through unlockables and remixed content, but also because the mechanics are so layered. Believe it or not, this game actually started the whole trend of letter grades at the end of your playthrough in the series, which obviously became a huge part of DMC and everything going forward as well. You're ranked based on completion time and item use, meaning the game is essentially testing you on your knowledge of the level design and your ability to negotiate the different traps and enemies as efficiently as possible. A scoring system like this can be a great incentive to get better in a lot of games, but Kamiya's penchant for encouraging mastery is also evident in Resi 2's design on a broader level, so let's focus on that second part for a bit. Mechanically, this game immediately has a lot more going on than its predecessor, with a much greater sense of physicality to combat. Consecutive handgun shots will now send enemies into a tumble, and following up quickly in that window causes them to fall over. By comparison, the way zombies react to your attacks in Resi 1 or even the GameCube remake is a bit more out of your hands. If you still manage to get munched on, breaking free from their grasp will actually send surrounding enemies flying as well. This mechanic is great for two reasons. Depending on your strategy for this run, you might want to take the hit and clear the path forward this way to improve your time or avoid using special weapons. More on that later. It also adds to the frantic nature of the combat, because as you've probably noticed by now, Resi 2 ramps the number of enemies on screen way up. If you get it right, a single tackle can be enough to get through a room without wasting a bullet, and if you mess up, you'll get stun-locked to death by the YOLO horde. Whoops. Resi 1's tech was a lot more limited, so the level design had to essentially force you into single enemy encounters with its tight corridors. With Resi 2's emphasis on crowds, then, comes a shift in level design philosophy. There are still plenty of claustrophobic hallways, but much of the police station is also made up of these square-like open-plan rooms. The office on the East Wing is one of the best examples of this. The way the furniture is arranged makes for an almost maze-like layout, and there are a lot of opportunities to flank zombies or trap them in corners. The bosses lean into this especially well, and while it does actually make knife-only runs pretty interesting, the average player is obviously gonna want to use those guns.
Game over.
And boy oh boy, what an arsenal. The variety of weapons is hugely expanded, and having to deal with so many more enemies at a time incentivizes you to think more deeply about how to use them. The old shotgun to the head strat still works if you just want to be fast, but patiently lining the zombies up to get 3 of them with a single grenade blast will save you so many bullets. By the way, the upgraded shotgun has to be in the running for best of all time in a game, right? Like, okay, heads exploding, pretty cool, but check this shit out. It straight up just tears dudes in half, and the impact literally sends Leon flying to the previous screen. It's like the poor PS1 just can't handle Kamiya's power. Resi 2 gets pretty much all it can out of its combat with this limited control system. The enemy variety especially ramps up so much faster than it does in the first game. But that's only one part of the equation I was talking about earlier. The overall level design structure is also crucial. In Resi 1, one of your first major goals is to acquire the shotgun, which can take zombies out instantly and save you a ton of ammo. Knowledge of the mansion's layout is tremendously helpful here, because with so many branching paths, you're gonna be wasting a lot of resources if you don't prioritize that one objective. Resi 2 flips this whole progression on its head, because as I said before, more enemies means more different weapons with unique uses to worry about, which means more backtracking and crisscrossing through the police station. As I alluded to before, Leon's weapons can be powered up with different parts hidden throughout the game world. The automated handgun knocks zombies over, the custom shotgun can deal with crowds, and the upgraded magnum is your main damage dealer. Claire specializes in the crossbow and different grenade types with unique effects, and depending on your choices throughout each campaign, again more on that later, there's even special weapons for each character that take up 2 inventory slots each. Here's the thing though, using a special weapon like the flamethrower will actually reduce your score by an entire rank. If you took the time to upgrade Leon's arsenal and stock up on ammo as Claire, you're really not gonna need those extra guns. This whole system incentivizes you to explore the space thoroughly and be smart with how you plan out your route. And seriously, who even wants an SMG when you have the custom fucking shotgun? Oh baby. See, because trying to get those upgrades and get that ammo within a reasonable completion time is where the level design starts to show its genius. Resi 2's progression is actually quite a bit more linear than the first games, in the sense that you do have to complete a lot of the tentpole objectives in a set order. The Gaming Brit has a whole video about that you should check out. Resi 2 never feels as linear as it is though, because there's so much misdirection. The fact only 2 out of 5 available branches actually actually progress the story isn't that big of a deal when every single one of them has dangerous enemies for you to contend with and you don't know which is the right one on your first playthrough. One major advantage of this approach is that it allowed the designers to build the police station in a way that's much more interconnected than the Spencer Mansion was. Resi 1 did give you a bunch of doors you'd have to open from behind, which would then serve as small shortcuts. But the way all the rooms on either of the two main floors are stacked on top of each other means that there really isn't a way to get an item from one side of the mansion all the way to the other very efficiently. There's a single item box and a single set of stairs per wing. The East Wing in particular has its save room and staircase tucked away all the way over here. This can lead to a lot of unexciting back and forth on your first mansion visit when you've already taken care of most of the enemies, and I suspect that's part of the reason why they introduced the Crimson Heads in the remake. Now, here's how Resi 2 handles this aspect. The police station's West Wing is similar to that of the Spencer Mansion in that there's one dedicated save room right next to a staircase. However, in Resi 1, you get there pretty much immediately via the second floor, whereas in Resi 2, the second floor isn't actually available at the start. Instead, you have to go all the way around the West Wing to the save room staircase and then come back to the main hall through the second floor library. Gotta say, this ladder shortcut though, that's some straight up Dark Souls shit, am I right, fellas? This balcony above the main hall is also how you access the second floor of the East Wing, and what do you know, the very first room has a typewriter and an item box. You then come back down later over here via the fire escape. Now, this seems like a bit of a perilous journey just to get to your first save room, right? Well, it turns out there's actually already a typewriter in the main hall and another item box in the first room of the West Wing. Notice something yet? You have two proper save rooms right adjacent to the main hall, and the East Wing has an alternate way to move between the two floors very close by. The upshot of all this is that it's incredibly convenient to move key items between different points of interest. It doesn't just cut down on a ton of busy work, it also encourages you way better to get familiar with the space. When you get a key for an optional item, you're actually excited to go and grab it because getting around isn't a pain in the ass. At the same time, this convenience still feels earned because you had to do that whole trek at the start, and because Resi 2 is a bit more liberal with surprise enemy spawns. I know I made that dumb Dark Souls joke earlier, but you really do get a similar sense of relief when you kick down that ladder. This probably goes without saying, but with the upgraded presentation comes a concerted effort to make every shortcut memorable and unique. I especially like sliding down the ventilation shaft from the third floor all the way down to the basement. It's so good. If you know how to take advantage of the interconnected level design, the game will reward you for it in spades, and that ties in perfectly with Resi 2's emphasis on optional weapons and fast completion times. The level design deserves a lot of praise as it is, but it wouldn't be a Kamiya game if they didn't take it a step further. Both the East and the West Wing each have a long hallway that wraps around the other rooms, and the windows on the outer wall were all shattered during the outbreak. Now, each wing has its own shutter mechanism, but neither is functional when you first arrive. Later you get the chance to fix one of the mechanisms, and the wing you leave unguarded is gonna be run over by zombies, of course. Now, get this. On the West Wing, you can reach almost every room without having to go through that hallway if you're willing to take a detour. The basement, though, can only be reached via the staircase on the East Wing, except when you're playing as Leon, who can just use the shortcut I mentioned earlier. Claire only has to visit the basement once, and that's before those extra zombies show up. The cord to fix the shutter mechanism is found on the East Wing, and that's probably where most players will use it on their first playthrough, even though, as you can see, it's actually more helpful on the West Wing. The game keeps throwing you little curveballs like this, but what puts it over the top is how you can always work around them if you use your head. You enter this gun shop in the intro, and then suddenly... But once the owner is grabbed by the ghoulies, you can actually snatch his shotgun off the floor when playing as Leon, or his crossbow when playing as Claire. Like I said before, Resi 2's enemies are immediately a lot more vicious than the first games. The first one you meet in the police station is a goddamn licker. So having that extra weapon can make that encounter, or even just the way to the police station, play out entirely differently. Leon gets his second shotgun pretty early into the police station, but Claire has to work a bit harder for that second crossbow. So since you can't unload the ammo, it makes sense to just go all out with Leon, whereas with Claire you're gonna want to hold onto those arrows for a little longer. With Resident Evil 2, it really feels like every single element of its design was scrutinized with the idea of how can we make this even better. Every aspect of the first game wasn't just improved upon, there's always some kind of unique twist. Like the team tried to take every single idea to its furthest possible conclusion. And I get that same sense with all of Kamiya's games. What you end up with is a sequel that stands tall within its own series, and that is still— wait, actually, hang on, we're not done yet. So, I just said how Kamiya is always trying to push every aspect of his games to the next level. Remember how the first game had 2 playable characters with slightly different campaigns through the Spencer Mansion to choose from, and how that same idea was reused for Resi 2 and kind of in Resi 6? Well, in the case of 2, Kamiya wasn't content with just leaving it at that. Jill's campaign in Resi 1 is essentially just an easier version of Chris's, whereas choosing either Leon or Claire will illuminate completely different aspects of Resi 2's story. Leon meets Ben and Ada and gets to learn more about the Spencer Mansion incident on his adventure, and Claire encounters Sherry and the police chief on her quest, who are both closely tied to the conspiracy involving the police station. Coupled with the differences in weapons and item placements, this would already be a nice leap over the original game, but it doesn't stop there. In a move that, given the context of Resi 2's rocky development, genuinely blows my mind, Kamiya came up with the idea of the so-called zapping system when the game was already nearing completion. Resi 1 came on a single disc that housed both Jill's and Chris's campaigns, but with Resi 2, you get one CD for each of the 2 protagonists. At the start of the game, Leon and Claire are split up in a car accident, and finishing either of the 2 campaigns leaves you with a save file you can load from the respective other disc. This allows you to explore what happens to that other character. You now enter the police station from the back and are faced with completely new challenges, like Mr. X, who will stalk you throughout the entire game. This B campaign contains completely different scenes and gameplay scenarios depending on the character you're playing as, and it's the only way to see the true final boss and ending.
Go? Where?
Hey, it's up to us to take out Umbrella.
No, we're not there yet. The real genius of the B scenarios is that, while the story is reset to the beginning, mechanically the game picks up right where you left off. The police station opens up much more quickly now, to the point where it's almost overwhelming. Instead of having you deal with literal locked doors, the game immediately puts you up against multiple lickers and hordes of zombies with only basic equipment on some of those branches, meaning you should probably leave them until you get stronger weapons. Items are in different locations, and even puzzles are remixed to constantly mess with the player. Those shutters from before, the mechanism now short circuits and you'll have to deal with zombies in both hallways. Great. Your choices made during the A scenario can even affect the B scenario in a few meaningful ways. Yeah, you thought the whole Wonderful 101 thing was crazy? Kamiya's been pulling stunts like that throughout his entire career. The whole idea of the zapping system is a perfect fit for Resi 2's emphasis on optimized playthroughs. Not only does it give you the chance to test your knowledge of the game immediately after the credits roll, by essentially making the B scenario mandatory to see the whole story, it shows you just how fun it is to replay. I played through all 4 scenarios for this video and expected to be sick of Resi 2 by the end, but just writing the script is giving me the itch to dip back in. I'd love to try hard mode or the randomizer on the N64 version. Okay, so instead of doing a third fake-out ending for this video, I should probably just address the elephant in the room, which is the remake coming out this week. I think it looks very promising, and I still think that having completed the demo. Over the course of this video, I drew a lot of comparisons between the original Resi 2, its predecessor, and the GameCube remake. Resi 1 is a great game, but it definitely left some room for refinement. I'm hesitant to say that the remake replaces the original. They each appeal to me in different ways, but editions like the Crimson Heads aren't just meant to spice things up. They take the resource management and backtracking of the 96 game a lot further than was previously possible, while still working within the limitations of the original level design. You can really tell this is the same director going back to the drawing board and realizing his true vision. I hope I was able to show you that Resident Evil 2 already improves on its predecessor by making a lot of fundamental changes to its structure. There isn't anything I would change about it, and that's why I'm glad that the remake seems to be charting out its own direction instead of trying to outright supplant this legendary classic, and it seems to do so by adhering to and expanding upon the original in the ways that count. I made this video knowing that a lot of people will inevitably look at this as a Resi 2 replacement, however. Resi 2 is wholly unique within its own series. Even the remake isn't carrying over the zapping system from the looks of things, which is definitely a bummer. This game is still absolutely worth your time, and to consider the remake the same thing but better, or even wanting it to be that, is really selling it short. Play the remake, it looks great, but if I did my job right, then I hope this video has piqued your interest enough to at least give the original a chance. It's epic, it's exciting, and just really well thought out from top to bottom. Come on, do it for him. Okay, do I get to play the song now? Can I play the song? Okay, I'll play this. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry the vlog didn't happen, just didn't work out for a lot of reasons. If you enjoy my work, please consider sharing it with your friends or whomever else may be interested, and leaving a thumbs up, because that really helps a lot. I'll probably have posted this on Twitter by the time you're watching this, but my plan for this channel is to release a video every month, if possible. So look forward to that. I have a lot planned, and yes, I'm gonna cover DMC5. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about the Resident Evil 2 remake yet, or if I'm gonna do anything at all, but we'll see. Yeah. Bye-bye.